thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. We're just talking about, I know like the NoCap name, some people still don't know what that means if you're over the age of 40.
Everybody knows the name. It's fine.
No, so it means...
Don't beat a dead horse.
It means truth.
Truth.
And so now when you say NoCap to anyone that is under 23, I don't know.
I guess it
Alex's age, maybe.
Yeah, my age.
I'll be texting my daughter right after the program.
Yeah, perfect.
And she'll go, wow,
NoCap.
you're cool.
Perfect. So in true New Yorker fashion, you were coming from Brooklyn, which not a lot of these, self-proclaimed New Yorker big developer types do. We all know that you guys are in Westchester. But
why are they? Well, they're not Upper East Side? Is that not a thing?
No, that's not a thing.
Oh, okay.
So what I was going to ask is, when was the last time you were down here in this neighborhood?
It's interesting, as I was coming around here, I was thinking I probably have not been on the ABCs for quite some time. And it's easy from Brooklyn. I was saying how easy it was to get here. And I do laugh about Brooklyn because back in the day, the definition of success was getting the hell out of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And you know that, right? And I used to say people would move to the Upper East Side now to save money so they can afford to live in Brooklyn. So that story has changed, over the years in ways that you're fully aware of as an Upper East Sider.
Yeah.
And so changing neighborhoods is obviously a big part of my obsession in my business. And I really like this neighborhood. I would be curious if you think it's lost its edge, because that's, of course, what we all spend time talking about. Once,
I do.
Once
I think it lost its edge.
We were at some hipster coffee shop down the street not too long ago, and there was a guy talking about his stock options. And
he definitely had the look and the appeal of the ABCs down here. He
dressed the part,
the haircut, the neck tattoos, the face tattoos, whatever. But then, like, flashy gold watch and like yelling about some crypto trade with his model girlfriend, and we were just confused. I mean, it's definitely. I always say, like, New York needs its weirdos. You need the weirdos in each neighborhood. That's what makes New York fun. You need the people who like bring their own energy and their own flash and taste to each neighborhood.
And do you guys believe what I'm fond of saying, Alex, is that, like, if you want to know where the next great place is, you follow the food and the culture, right? So that's, if anybody pretends to know what happened to Brooklyn in the years that I was shilling for space at Metrotech, which people behind my back would call retrotech. But in the 80s, when Koch was looking for a place for companies to go before they went to Plano, Texas or Hoboken, he came up with the strategy for downtown Brooklyn. But I think that the story of Brooklyn, if it is to be described in any way that might be close to being accurate, is that it became a hub for food and artists and the kinds of people you're talking about. And then the sad part is when they're pushed out, they can't afford to hang around, and they go to the next place that becomes the next really exciting and interesting place for New York. So it is something we think a lot about in our business, because you want to be part of all of that energy and that becoming, but you certainly don't want to be part of bringing it down.
Right.
How are you finding it in the city? Like, when you're looking at projects in the city, how do you find the microcosms of culture and food? It's on every block.
It's so different than the way it was when I first started, where the boundaries of good neighborhoods were so defined that you wouldn't want to pick the wrong spot around the corner from the right spot. And it really might have been the definition of success or failure. And then I think over time, what's happened is the boundaries have blurred and neighborhood definitions have become much more interesting and flexible. And I think it's really the story of this city and its resilience and its ability for things that were quite conventional and important to become almost unacceptable and uninteresting. And that just paves the way for people to find new places to call home. And I'm fascinated by it. And I don't really pretend to know how to predict it. But in our business, in the business of building places for people, there are just so many more places that you can do that now and experiment. So like we were looking at stuff on the Bowery and in places where, 10, 15 years ago, you couldn't get investors to have a conversation around it. And it has a lot to do with not necessarily comping to a residential building that you could say, look, this works. So if we build it, they will come. More about all the ingredients that go into making a neighborhood interesting. And I like to be ahead of some of those places, because if the retail's working, if the food scene's working, the cultural scene's working, it might not be the next Williamsburg, but like we don't necessarily want that either.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So
If you're still waiting on support tickets or chasing down wires, here's your sign. You've outgrown your current investor portal. InvestNext gives you modern raised infrastructure with waterfall automation, ACH payouts, and seamless co-sponsor support that scales. No more bolted-on features or just live with it answers. Your next raise deserves better. See why today's GPs are switching to InvestNext at investnext.com/NoCap.
Well, let's take a step back. You say I say that too much.
You do.
It's like every 2 minutes I say.
But you look good today, so I'll forget.
Taking a step back?
We're going to take a step back.
Let's take a step back.
And a lot of our listeners, not too far back, a lot of our listeners and viewers may not know about you.
Well, shame on them.
Shame on them, exactly. But you are one of the more well-known and I would say accomplished developers in New York City. And I think we don't have to talk about it too much because I know in other podcasts, people always ask the same questions, but real quick, can you give us your background and how you got started?
A background of pure serendipity. We all have to have a life plan, but I'd say to young people, have that life plan, but by golly, be ready for it to be completely upended.
Yeah.
Prepared to rip it up, toss it away, be opportunistic, take risks, be brave. I think, one of my superpowers is I'm not afraid. I probably should be more afraid than I am about certain things, but I think fear can really hold people back. And
I feel like in real estate, that's always the case. I feel like it's if you overthink things, you never do anything.
Yeah. Audacity, I think, has a role in what we do. Anyway, I won a fellowship. I mortgaged myself off to the school that gave me the most money. The Jesuits were kind to me. I have a crazy origin story around my upbringing, but I'd say that the only thing we knew was that things were going to change, and really didn't have our lunch money figured out by mid-month. My parents lived on a month-by-month kind of an arrangement, which was really dysfunctional and crazy. They were hippies, and so there was just a lot of uncertainty, which I think, I'm telling you this because I think it makes a really good real estate developer. Because if you need everything tickety-boo at the end of the day, you're not in the right business. Yeah. And so if you didn't quite know where the ground was shifting, all through your childhood, I think it means that this business, which is, at times quite destabilizing, maybe it was a training ground for something I didn't know at the time. And so given this fellowship, I came into government under the great Ed Koch, and I was witness to opportunity that I think today is probably not even available in these agencies where they were touching every piece of real estate, every tract of land around the city, and asking young people to come in and participate in thinking about what to do with it. So my time at the Public Development Corporation, which is now the Economic Development Corporation, was kind of a storied time. And being a real estate developer at the time, we're talking one step above a car salesman. People didn't wake up and say, when I grow up, I want to be a real estate developer. You wouldn't go up to Columbia University and give a lecture to people who aspire to be real estate developer. It just wasn't that fancy.
Why is it to me? It just city was kind of in disarray.
Well, let's get into what the caricature of a real estate developer is. Okay, a brown bag of cash on the waterfront in Jersey. Developers generally, I would say, I really prefer placemaker.
It's funny that you use that word because I was going to call you a placemaker.
Thank you for that.
I think we were saying this off mic, but given your track record and things that you've built in the city, which I know you'll get into right now, you do have a skill set that very few people in New York have, I think, because it's a hard one to have. There's not a lot of scale where you can place make in New York outside of whatever happened in Williamsburg. That's fine. But it's limited. It's limited a lot to other cities because where can you touch and manipulate and shape whole neighborhoods?
And you only know it by doing it. So I think the thing about, you can't read a book or go to a graduate program and learn how to be a real estate developer. Right. And so over the course of my career from the mid 80s until now, people figured out that it is an incredible profession, especially in an urban environment like New York. But I think that it had probably well, first of all, it's a dynasty business. It was in New York, right? So if you were a big real estate family, you had an in. But in my cohort, right, so in my age group, people were flocking to the internet. It was internet gold. It just generationally speaking, if you say what was the secret of your success? A lot of good luck, a lot of just bumbling around trying to figure out, do I want to do this? And this fellowship really gave me an opportunity to dabble in something I wouldn't have otherwise. I was on my way to law school. And so the fellowship was a chance to pick an agency, have a little fun, and figure out if I could understand what it was all about. And that was economic development at a time when that agency was thinking about some of the largest, most transformational plans across the city. Riverwalk, which was the east side, South Ferry at the tip with Zeckendorf, the west side, but it was really over by the Intrepid. It wasn't the west side as we think of Hudson Yards. And Brooklyn, which was considered like, okay, people took bulletproof limousines over the Brooklyn Bridge.
Is that a real thing?
I remember meeting with a bank at the request of Mayor Koch saying, I want them to stay in the city. We want them to look at these buildings. And he wouldn't even discuss subsidy unless they went to look at Brooklyn. And literally they came over in these colossal
You're kidding.
limousines and they were bulletproof because they were going to Brooklyn. And it was a scrappy game.
Wow.
And in that way, the skill set of learning how to do it in places that were not that popular is great because you just sharpen your skills, you learn how to sell, and you have a certain grit about you because if you don't have it, the job's not getting done. And so, winning the New York Times assignment many years later and being in this schizophrenic existence where rents in downtown Brooklyn, office rents, stayed within $3 for the entire time that I worked at Forest City, like $3. There was no highs and lows. It was like a stagnant compression market. When Manhattan heated up, you could do something in Brooklyn. Going to the New York Times where you could name your number once we built the beauty and the gray lady, put her imprimatur on. It was good enough for her. And so the rest would follow.
And the New York Times building it's one of the tallest buildings in the city, right?
I would say not anymore necessarily, but I'd say, one of the great examples of putting an icon across from the Port Authority in the heart of Times Square.
Port Authority, which is a dump.
A dump,
It's a dump.
High risk of terrorism. Remember, this building was built right after 9/11. We had all of the things going against us, except we were in Times Square, and it was the New York Times that was deciding every 100 years where it was going to put its next headquarters. And so that would probably for me would be my breakout project where I was given strict orders not to chase it because we weren't going to win as Brooklyn developers. I really said to Bruce, just let me have my comeuppance and learn the hard way. He challenged me. He let me chase it. We ultimately won because the Times really was a meritocracy. They picked the best firm on a scorecard where every individual and every firm was graded.
What do you think differentiated you guys from the competition to win that one?
One, we really were qualified because we had built the 42nd Street Madame Tussauds and the AMC theaters. We were the 42nd Street DP was the government agency. You had to know the ins and outs of that group. We lived it, and we lived it when Disney was getting built. We actually knew how to put a building up in Times Square. The other thing is we were really good builders because we built a lot. We just didn't build it on Park Avenue.
Right.
We were a really good team, and I'll tell you the part that I think really mattered because I wanted to find out afterwards how we all stacked up against our competitors. And it's the stuff that we all know, but we forget, which is in the presentation, we brought a group of people and everybody had a role. Bruce Ratner came. I kind of told Bruce what to say, but every single person at the table contributed. And a New York City developer of another type would go in and command the room, and
It's
be the only one that
Yeah,
spoke,
right.
and have a team of this person is going to do the work, but I'm going to tell you the way it's going to go down. And then lastly, a little bit of humor. So I was young, I had nothing to lose. Bruce told me we weren't going to win anyway. I had some summer intern, and I was like, this could really be very stodgy and boring. So I rented an old time New York Times paperboy cap. The big bag, right? And even the shoes, the silly shoes from the 30s.
Get your paper here, get your paper here.
And I had this intern, and he was incredible. I said, this is what you're going to do. In the middle of the meeting, you're going to burst into the Eagle room, okay? And we have an oversized scissors in that bag and a giant schedule that's been rolled up. And we're going to roll it across the boardroom table, and you're going to take that scissors out, and you're going to cut that schedule in half.
It's crazy. I love it, man.
And you had Sulzberger in the room, and we made it very substantive, but we made it funny, and we were real people. And I have to tell you, I remember hearing that Arthur's wife shopped at Walmart, and that these were real people who were dynasties in New York, but that were real people. And I think that plus the fact that we really were qualified, our scorecard was really, really high. And I think, we were like the little engine that could. And I think our interview went really well. And they picked us on, I never forget, on Valentine's Day. And they also were really about process and schedule. and we were very disciplined. And so that was a big deal for me.
So you had already done 42nd Street at this point, and now this is your first breakout project. How long did it take?
So I was in my 30s, and we got awarded in 2000, and then that building didn't open until 2007. And it was, again, right after 9/11, the whole project was in peril. And I'll never forget that Renzo Piano was in New York on 9/11 taking his architectural exam because we had teamed him up with FS Fox and Fowl. And I think he from that point on, he wanted to run the show in New York. And so he was taking his exam on 9/11. The New York Times convened us the day after and said, we don't believe that anybody would want to live in a building that might withstand the attacks of 9/11.
Wow.
We want to keep our building as transparent and as beautiful as it is. And we are the New York Times, and we're going to build this building. And it's going to have as much transparency as we believe our newspaper and our business does. And we want to go forward.
Wow.
And we were like, wow. And it was just like, again, one of these, we're going to talk about New York City as a place of great resilience and how many times I've witnessed the writing of New York City's obituary. But if that moment was not this like, wow, that we are able to be part of something which is really emblematic of what we all believe in New York, which is that the comeback story is alive and well.
Yeah, every time people write it off, it keeps coming back, doesn't it?
And that light, New York City dies every 3 years or 4 years, which I really don't get, because I feel like people are always on two sides of the fence, and it's you never bet against New York, and then I guess the transients write it off every 3 years. But are we really at the point where you could still write New York off? Like, how do people even sell that narrative?
We talk about politics, and should I just summarize the fact that my career was about just spontaneity?
Sorry, I didn't mean to deter.
I just want to make sure that I put a finer point on it.
Go wherever
it seems like I'm going everywhere, but I don't have Alzheimer's.
There's no rules here.
The idea that didn't have a plan, didn't even understand what economic development was. The vein, the needle was in, and I was like, this is incredible. Like talking about neighborhoods, changing the face of the city, the skyline, the ground plane, and doing it in economic development and meeting all these developers. And, of course we could have a lot of fun talking about what it was like to sit across from some of these guys and what they would say to me as a woman. I mean, I am fortunate to be very serious about what I'm doing and fairly siloed. Like I'm mission focused. So I was like, I have a job. I know what my job is, and I'm here to do it. And I would just let all that stuff go over my head. And then over the years, I started to realize there were good ones and then there were not so good ones. Yeah. And so when Bruce called me after doing it for 7 years, Dinkins came into office. I was like, it's game over. We're not going to have the same level of engagement and fun. And moreover, there wasn't the same appreciation for the healthiness of an economy and its connection to social welfare programs and all the things that he stood for and really wanted to do. And I was just like, my time here has come. And in 7 years in public service, you're going to decide, am I a public servant, by my making, by my career, or am I using public service as a way to leverage a career in the private sector? And I realized it was my time to go. And knowing that when you are doing civic work is really important, because for years later, there were people that stayed in that agency. They made a great career, but they never, ever made the leap into the private sector. I was like, I could have had a V8. I woke up one day and I'm like, okay, I could do exactly the same work, the same level of intensity, engagement, and impact. And I could cross the table and sit beside a developer, and I could pay back, my college debt, and I could do all the things I want to do and still have purpose. And this public-private partnership stuff meant a lot to me. So I decided to go with Bruce. But, it was the early 90s. There wasn't a lot of development going on. And so I went to Brooklyn, and, I like to do it the hard way. So it was a hard story to sell. I spent 23 years there.
I heard that you moved closer to Barclays when you were doing that development. Can you talk a little bit more about that project and what you experienced?
Yes. I really do hard, but I'd say like after you build a New York Times building and you win against all odds, like what's going to come next? I did New York by Geary. And then I was running the operating portfolio for Bruce. So I was leasing all the space and I was dealing with the public markets and all the malaise of being a public company that wants to do development, which was fine when your stock was high and it was pre-financial crisis. We should talk about that, right? Yeah. But building in a public company format, eat what you kill, being in a room with a bunch of guys and just realizing I'm in a meritocracy. It's the best man or woman for the job. I was a high performer, and Bruce knew what made me tick, and he motivated me, and I delivered. Great.
A lot of platforms say they support GPs, but only a few actually do. If your current system makes complex raises feel complex, it might be time for an upgrade. InvestNext is built for GPs who move fast. Integrated payments, co-sponsor visibility, and a portal your LPs actually want to use. While other platforms pivot to add-on services to plug their software gaps, InvestNext is doubling down to ensure our product works for you. Raise with the tools that move like you do. Learn more at investnext.com/NoCap.
So after those two,
You make that very simple, by the way.
Yeah, and you make it sound easy.
Yeah.
Like I imagine there's a lot of circumstances and times when you had to just brush it off, and it was probably very difficult. I imagine. And then to, take your profession very serious, but not yourself so serious, I think is another trait that I can tell you clearly have. How do you do that? What's the secret to that?
I think it's just a scrappy upbringing. I'm just a girl from Queens.
Yeah.
Rolling into a room with somebody who had a lot of space in Brooklyn, bringing Bruce Ratner, the guy's in a man cave. I'm not going to say who it is. He had his comeuppance, sitting there and trying to get maybe the last $3 out of a 300,000 square foot lease in Brooklyn.
Yeah, classic.
Very big deal.
Right.
Broker was stuck. We couldn't get it done. We get summoned to his office with the chief operating officer the hour before. He's having breakfast. He's having bacon, sausage, and ham.
In front of you guys, just
he's
sounds
just
like a
like, they're
cartoon.
just meat eaters. Like, you're
right.
going in,
Yeah,
we're going in for the kill.
Right,
This whole thing, I was just like, what are we doing?
You read somewhere that if you eat bacon
You can
and meat, you're
intimidate
tough.
your
Yeah,
counterpart.
that's right.
So we roll into this meeting, and I'm not even kidding. The guy is smoking a cigar, and it's at
With
this
breakfast.
point, the CEO now is like, he's having a cigar at
It's like a cartoon.
8:50.
Yeah, literally.
And literally, there's a button. The door in the office closes. It's like a man cave, and he's cursing profoundly. And Bruce is actually like, where did you bring me?
What are we doing?
And I'm like, we're getting the $3. And we're sitting there, and he goes, I just want to say something. You're here to tell me what? You're wasting my time. Like, what? These people in Brooklyn, they could be in Calcutta for all the fuck I care. And I was like, he's like, so it's all about the numbers, and I don't care about where they're located. So how are you going to convince me that, I should pay any more for the rent? And by the way, he made like at least 3 inappropriate comments in the meeting.
Naturally, yeah.
And Bruce is sitting there, I'm sitting there, and I just stuck with my script and told him that there just wasn't any way we were going to make the deal if we didn't get closer to the number. And so we're in this face-off. It's ridiculous. There's testosterone just it's just like oozing out of the guy. And he goes, I think I'd like to make you a job offer because you really got moxie. So how about you come work for me? Right in front of Bruce.
Wow.
So we ultimately we didn't resolve it there, but I held my ground. Bruce and I walk out, and Bruce is like, geez, MaryAnne, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you. I have daughters. This is outrageous. If you would have wanted to stand up and just walk out, I would have. And I said, no, because we're going to get at least $2, right? We go downstairs, and there's a bunch of black cars waiting there, and we get in. Bruce says Ratner, and they said, yes, we get in. And we're halfway, we're heading uptown, and there's this radio, cacophony of sound, where is so-and-so's car? So we'd gotten in the CEO's car.
Holy shit.
And the driver realizes he does not have
The right person.
And he starts panicking. And I guess the moral of the story was,
Did you
Bruce
think
was
that was
just
a power move?
Yeah, it was a
They
purposeful
took my
thing.
fucking car, really?
So I don't know what he thought, but I know Bruce was like, this is so great. I'm
Yeah,
it's
that's
a little
really
passive, but we don't want this guy to get in trouble. So we gave the guy $500 and we said, you can let us out here and go back. We didn't want to, because you got the sense that it wasn't going to end well for this guy.
Right.
So we gave him $500 and Bruce was like, we really got him back, didn't we? And I was like, no, we didn't actually. Minor inconvenience, super funny, but no. And I said, a guy like that, well, it'll happen. It's not going to happen because of this deal, but it'll happen. And sure enough, the downfall happened on its own. I'm nothing against the man, but I can tell you his behavior was so unbecoming.
Wow.
Yes, we got the $2. And it was one meeting where I'd say it was like another day in the office. If we're just going back to what it was like to do business in an industry where it's dominated by old white men
Wow.
who don't believe they have to follow the rules. I would say that was one of the great examples. I've never been as explicit. I once told the story, leaving all those involved out, but like it's time.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
No, I think it's something. And by the way, it's wild. I think a lot of people don't think things like that actually happen. I mean, it is straight out of a movie.
Straight out of a movie.
Wild.
So you get the opportunity to do Barclays.
Right. I would say Les got the opportunity. I was the everything but girl at
Okay.
the office, right? I did everything except
Won
Atlantic
the
Yards
opportunity, yeah.
because there were an army of people doing it. My partner at the time was taking care of it, and I was building Barclays, and I was building New York by Geary, and I was leasing all the space, and I was looking for our next deals. And then one day I was coming over the Brooklyn Bridge, and I got the phone call like, you gotta come to my office. And Bruce is like, Jim's not going to be here anymore and we need to figure it out. And I said, well, who the hell's going to run the project? He said, you are. And I thought, in the arc of a career, if we're getting on to like what would matter to me is what's up next. And I thought, this is the universe talking to me that I'm ready. And if it wasn't the uber example of what it takes to do big things in a big city, there would be no other example, right? So it was everything I had learned, or at least tried to learn, over the course of my career happening to me all at once. And I inherited a boatload of people, a ton of rancor, obviously, opposition, pressure, and possibilities. And I had a lot to do, a lot to learn. And I remember being, in some ways, I could be paralyzed by all of this, or I could just jump into it. And, within 24 hours of being announced as the new head of that project, the cameras were out, all the opposition were filming. They were, following my path back up to Edgemont, where I was at the time raising my kids. And there were just no rules. There were no, they fought we were at war, really. There was a campaign.
You're at war with the opposition because it's a big project. There's a lot of gentrification going on, I guess, as part of the
Well, the people that we were moving,
one element.
start there.
Can you explain what this project entails for those that don't know, what it was?
I can't believe we're at the point where people might not know.
Well, not everyone.
What happened with Barclays.
Well, I can tell you where I think the shitstorming started, and the origin of it, which really it was a couple of things. It was like a perfect storm, I think. One is that it involved condemnation, which is the taking of land. For those that don't know, power of the state to take land. Many of us who know that anything big with disparate ownership won't happen unless there's some overlord that's going to help put the whole thing together. You had 60 different owners to put that land together, primarily government controlled, but at the end, to get the parcels that were needed to create the opportunity, the government used condemnation. And
I didn't realize it was 60 separate. That's a crazy amount.
At the time, in terms of like what we had to actually go out and acquire. Wow. We believed that we could maybe do friendly condemnation where we got ahead of it and just bought everybody out at good numbers, which we really tried to do. But even though possession's 9/10 of the law, if you have 99.9% of the parcels and you're building an arena and that last holdout is sitting on center court, you got nothing, right? So it was really a race to put the project together, move the team. Again, a public real estate company, non-REIT, public, buying a basketball team and building an arena. I would say that was a pretty badass thing, and I give it to Bruce because, as he would say, all mistakes are relative. It goes back to the family dinner table. The Ratners really were in every basic food group. They were building malls. We were building office buildings, residential buildings, hotels. This is another reason why I think I might have a differentiating component to my career, which is, you have office developers, you've got residential developers, right? So to be able to build hotels, office buildings, residential buildings, condos, and retail, to build an arena, this doesn't happen. If you build one
day, you're switching your perception of value, which I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's a really it's a really impressive skill set. Again, not to flatter you, but how did you work on that in your career? How are you able to? When I think about what makes a good developer, you have to be able to maximize and juice every little piece of value in a way that it makes sense, right? So you're now dealing with a basketball arena and like this is completely different, plus the retail that goes with it and whatever else is needed and transportation, traffic. And you were doing an office project the week prior. Like, how did you balance that?
Keep pivoting from one to the other.
How do you grow that skill for yourself?
So one of my great mentors was the master, Bruce Ratner, who just was not afraid of anything, would just become a student of everything. He became a student of basketball. He went on Mad Mike, Mike and the Mad Dog, that show.
Yeah.
And they tried to eviscerate him. And he kept his own. He learned everything he needed to know about basketball as a sport. I was like, you're going to do the boys with toys and I'll do the building. Like I'll build the arena, but you got to do the team thing. Cause like I don't understand sitting around with a bunch of investors where you make a capital call for 50 million and everybody wants to see the draft pick.
Right.
That's not where I came from.
Right.
So I'm like, I love to watch it, but I'm never going to understand it. So Bruce jumped into the team stuff, did it really well. Also treated the arena like real estate. Like why is there so much space between the seats? Like, can we skinny it up?
Mm-hmm.
Can we create a brand around the food because we're in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Can we really leverage all of the things that make Brooklyn special? Can we appeal to the people who miss the Dodgers? Can we make it about jobs and
So do you
basketball?
get that granular in that development? Like
Oh my gosh.
even those
How did you
things are
not?
I just never think about it.
It's so, I always say, if you shadowed a real estate developer like us, like all the years we were putting that project together, and we said, let's watch where they spend their time, it would be an unbelievable way to show that good placemakers have warm blood flowing through their veins. The quality of life things, the amount of time it took to get out of your seat to get to the subway, the creation of the subway, the fact that we wanted to make sure people could leave within minutes and get home
By the way,
quickly.
totally. I remember thinking last time I went to Barclays how easy it was to get in and out of. And I definitely remember that.
And it's such a difficult task for the people who are going to be listening to this. I don't know if everybody realizes, when we're talking about developing an office building or any other asset, when you're confined to an envelope, and it's a very clearly stated envelope, there's only so much you could do. Some people are better than others, and maybe you can activate a terrorist or whatever it is. Like you can find your little element. But when you have to give away effectively so much of it for the public benefit and to make it make sense, the sidewalks, the transportation access, ride pickup areas, your players coming in, like it's effectively leaving money on the table. So you have to be really smart with how you're balancing that, which I found very impressive in this whole undertaking. Give us the craziest element or the hardest part of that whole development? Or whatever comes first to mind, because I like to think that your gut's holding on to something. So whatever came first to mind, whichever story, that's what we want to hear.
Well, it's a project of a million stories, which I probably should write down. But
At least.
When's your book coming out?
Right after this, actually. That's
when I was on a track to becoming the CEO, which I tried to talk Bruce out of, which we could talk about as a leadership question, like why would I try to talk him out of it? I believed I had the better job, which was wingman. I had a lot of the accountability, the responsibility. So I didn't get the glory, but I really loved my job. And I was like, you don't want to do this.
This is very Tony Soprano of you. If you ever watched The Sopranos, where they're like, who the fuck wants to be the boss? Somebody wants to be the boss.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
That's right.
So watching Bruce over the years and realizing like, I don't know, I like my job. And as I got further up in the organization, I didn't have my eye on the corner office. And one day he rolled in and said, you have to be the CEO. I was like, no, I don't. You have to be the CEO. And we fought about it. And then I realized, what is wrong with me? Like, is this a thing where like I think most men would take the contract and worry about the rest later. I went on a 2-year campaign for the creation of Bruce Ratner's chairmanship and my presidency and CEOship. So I wanted the whole thing to be completely understood, vetted.
You wanted everyone to buy into it.
Him particularly, because I was like, emotionally, you're not ready. You may be ready intellectually, but this is an amazing story of your vision and your career, and I don't really think you want to give it up.
Yeah, you don't want him to hand the reins over, but then still be in your face every day.
And I didn't want to be like a shadow CEO where for women and for the industry and what it represented, I didn't want to be, he's behind the curtains. I'm like, okay, Bruce, what should I do next? So I was obsessed with the fact that if I was going to be the CEO, I had to be the real CEO. But I think that project, there's so many stories, but I think that the opening of Barclays, where we had booked Jay for like 12 sold out nights, I think, September 28th, 2012. And we had a requirement based on the government that we would finish and open the subway station at the same time. The arena could not open without the subway being open. Now, we built a $1 billion arena over a 2-year period. That subway would have been the end of us. I mean, it made building the arena seemed like you were building a Lego project. And that is a lot to do with the dysfunction of government, the aging infrastructure in our city, the fact that if you touched it, you owned it. That is why a $7 million pro forma for the subway entrance turned into $72 million.
Wow.
All of which, to your point, in de-risking a transaction, how do you pro forma that?
Yeah.
How do you explain that what you thought was a fraction of the cost actually ballooned into something quite extraordinary? So finishing that, because it became the blob that ate Brooklyn, to finish the subway station became near impossible. And you had a lot of bureaucrats that had to sign off on its completion. And I remember the moment when the team came in and said, so we're going to finish the arena and we're going to be ready for the concert, but we're not going to have the subway finished. And I think it was Cuomo. It was this moment where we were faced with this idea that Bruce was going to have to call the governor and say, like, we're opening, but we need you to relieve us of the obligation. And as you know, all of Brooklyn was going to fall into a giant traffic hole the night that arena opened. I mean, all the opposition said, you just watch, it's the end of the borough as we know it. And so instead, we got the station open. But I would say, to say that it was a squeaker, and the fact that we were told under no uncertain terms would the arena be allowed to open. So we would have had to cancel those nights with Jay-Z, and we would have had to basically just have an epic public fail on the heels of like opening this extraordinary landmark. And so that would have been a big win. But after so many setbacks, so much difficulty. Remember, the great financial crisis came right at us at the time that we were $500 million of equity in the dirt with not a single vertical building to show for it, 35 lawsuits and 10 years of delay.
Wow.
The news is important, but if you're a busy real estate professional like me, you don't have time to skim through dozens of dry and ad-filled media outlets each day. That's why I read the CRE Daily. It's a free email newsletter that cuts through the clutter and delivers concise, witty commentary on the latest trends and transactions in commercial real estate. If you're a commercial real estate professional, you owe it to yourself to try it out and stay on top of what's happening in the industry. It's only 5 minutes a day. Visit credaily.com to sign up for free.
It's a whole nother, it'd be interesting to talk about how you capitalize the project and everything. I'm sure there's a lot of ups and downs throughout the process there, but we only have so much time. And you brought up regulation and how difficult that made the project. We are currently in New York City. This is where you develop. Can we talk about regulation? Can we talk about, we can talk about the mayoral race.
Let's mix it.
Or not.
Let's condense it a little bit to say, what's your outlook on the city right now as a whole? What are you optimistic about? What are you less optimistic about?
So the only addiction I favor is staying addicted to hope, but the hope is not a plan, right? Mm-hmm. Just this idea that I am optimistic because this is part of how a developer kind of keeps going, right? Just to believe in the art of what's possible and to believe in the city and to believe that the things that we do really genuinely matter. Not just in New York, but in any city. That's what I want my legacy to be, is that you just made a little dent in the universe, is that you made a city a better place to live. And so I have a lot of conviction around what we do and how we do it. I left the public company because you can't do anything really badass and bold in a public REIT format. And we were on our way to staying in the public markets at Forest City, but not staying as a REIT and looking at strategic alternatives. And that's code for like, we're going to do something big, like sell ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I went to the company and said, like, this isn't going to be for me. I'm first and foremost a builder. And I love to be an operator, but I love to operate the things that we built. So I made the decision. Again, I don't know where I got the audacity to think that I could, as a girl from Queens with no family legacy in real estate, that I would just go out and start a company, but that's what I did. And that was 2018. And I did it because I believed that the city did have runway and that there was more good work to do, and that to do it in the private markets was the best way to do it, because to say development is like the dirty word in the public markets. Nobody has any patience. It's what have you done for me lately, quarter over quarter. And there's a reason, like an operating company, a real estate operating company in the public markets is a great thing. A development company in the public markets is a disaster. Yeah. There's 28-year-old kids, like, you're sitting there with these analysts and they're grading your paper, and they wouldn't know the first thing about the difference between a window wall or a curtain wall. Mm-hmm. So it was that belief that if I'm true to myself, my first love is building. So leaving the company and saying, I'm going to do this on my own, building a career of talent and realizing like it's the great people that do the great things, convincing 10 of them we're going to do this together, and then going off on our own. And that was, in many ways, to answer your question, a vote of optimism and conviction around New York City, because that's our playground, right? Knowing it was tough, not knowing there was going to be a pandemic, a credit crisis, a complicated political landscape. I think it's just that, of course, all these things are going to hit us, and if it's not one thing, it's going to be another. That's Superstorm Sandy, 9/11. Right. In my career, we've had these things happen. So it's the staying power of New York City and the belief that it is really important to have public policy that supports what we do. We have a way of figuring it out regardless. And so it's harder than ever. It's always been hard. It's harder than ever. It's more compelling than ever because we have a housing emergency. I feel the mandate, we have to build more housing.
Yeah.
This is the first time in my memory that every candidate believes that we're having a crisis and we have to figure it out.
They do, just in a very skewed spectrum. And, as someone who's lived here not as long, but is a true appreciator of the city and what it has to offer, it's a little nerve-wracking. It's a little nerve-wracking, and it's worrying, where we actually end up, because I don't know that there's a right answer. There's never just a binary right answer because we'd all be behind it. But it feels like some answers can hurt us far more and irrevocably more than others.
Very politically correct, by the way, and true. I mean, I think
I wasn't trying to be politically correct.
I think all people. I think often we are around echo chambers in real estate. At least I am. So I'm sure there's strong convictions for either side right now. I mean, there's just so much going on in this mayor's race. But do you think it's possible, I guess, to turn things around and get this city to a place where housing is affordable and plentiful?
I don't know if it's possible, but I think we have a real shot at doing it, and I'm not giving up. And I think that I can think of a lot of ways to do that, no matter who's mayor. I also go back to where does the power and the source of the legislation come from and how important the state is in all of this. We cocked up the program we use to build housing, and we're still figuring out how to build housing, not at the scale that we need to. But I think that New York's always going to be a place that people want to come live. And as long as that continues to be true, then it's on us to figure out how to make it happen. And I'm going to go back to this idea that I am fiercely committed to what I do and unapologetic about what I do. It's because I believe we do it really well. So I don't think I have to skulk around and being, feeling like nervous about the fact that the new mayor might think that, real estate developers are awful people. Like it's not a popularity contest. Right. I don't need somebody to like me. I need somebody to understand what I can do to make the city better. And I know that I can do that with my team. So I guess that's where I start and where I end on it, which is like, okay, we have to come up with all the ways in which we're going to make it possible. But I think that there are enough tools today. There's enough of a mandate. And there are enough people that know how to do it. And I think that the game has actually changed in a way where it's a better business now for communities, because you can't roll into a community and just have your way with them. And I never believed that you ought to, but it certainly happened for a very long time. We get back to why developers have the reputation of being just, not good people. And there are people that are just bad actors in every profession.
Right, and they ruin it for everyone else. Everyone just assumes they're all like that.
But by golly, when they find you, and they recognize, look at MRH, this building we built in West Chelsea. It's a cooperative that started in the Kennedy era of affordable housing. It is an unbelievable model of a middle-class population living in a neighborhood that wasn't quite as popular as it is now and as safe and as bougie. But like it was done in a way where it's a model to live from. And they needed to put one of their older buildings into development to create operating capital for them. And this was not an easy task to win them over, because they really believed that, if you actually did business with a developer, you moved over to the dark side. But I think we won that assignment because we did Barclays, and because the tender care and feeding of a community where every detail, things that people still don't know or recognize about what it's like to build a project like Pacific Park under a microscope. Every truck that rolled off of the site every single day had to be hosed down so the dirt particulate matter didn't get in airborne. And if it didn't happen, there was a camera that would pick that up and it would beam into the state of New York, and we would get the
No way.
Yes, and it might be the first large-scale project. I wish like Columbia would do this case study, which is when technology allowed millions of eyes on the work that we do, the craft of building. What does that look like? Building under a microscope, okay, where you had a bat phone into like telling on the developer and believing that the developer was not a good actor. So everything had to get litigated and discussed. And people often say to me, is the project a better project because of all of that? The 600 plus meetings that I went to when they said it was a deal that was done in a back room with 3 men in a room, 600 public meetings. Okay. So what I say is there are things about the project that got better because of that public process, but look where that project is today. And if you said to me, MaryAnne, what happened along the way? The viability of that project got wrung out of it because politicians, stakeholders, including the developer, were not prepared to say no. And the power of no, when you're not doing something by democracy, you're doing something by building consensus, listening, but then deciding as the expert how things have to kind of be done. And so that project, I mean, I probably have PTSD, but I'm going to say that like that project is failing in a way that is unfortunate. I know exactly how to make that project work, but I don't think the capacity exists inside of that community, which is the confluence of a number of very well-organized and powerful voices in Brooklyn who probably don't want to understand the nature of our business. Because, by the way, it's not that complicated. Real estate math is not difficult to understand. But it is one of those things where the project suffered death by 1,000 cuts. And the foisting of so much responsibility and obligation from the public sector onto the private sector that it just died of its own weight. And can it be reborn so that the thousands of housing units that have not been built can be built? It can be, but not without a reckoning.
Yeah.
MaryAnne, I know that we have to get you out of here. It's unfortunate that we have just this little
you
time.
You have so many little stories that would be just great to spend hours talking about.
We have hours.
Can we get you back on?
When you have a giant hole in your schedule, you can have me back, and we can pick even a theme, and we can try and stay on topic. We've been really good at like being
bouncing
super bouncy.
And
I love that, by the way, because
it's more natural. This is
what's going on inside my head. So I love it.
Like, totally.
Here, there, and everywhere. And you guys are just you're the real deal too. So
thanks so much for saying that.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming on. This was a long time in the making, so cool. This is great.
No cap, man.
Hey, no cap.